What's up, everybody? This is Alex from Fireside Giants, an Empire Sports Media production. You're listening to the Fireside Giants podcast. If you're a diehard Giants fan, you've come to the right place. Daily episodes, interviews, draft content, and so much more. Make sure to drop a like and a subscription below on YouTube, and don't forget to leave a comment. We love to engage everybody and build this community together. Today's episode, we are going to take a look at a rebuilding kind of mock of the Giants offensive line, a couple new players that, I thought might be a good idea. I wrote an article about this, trying to think of how the Giants could piece together a new offensive line, spending a little bit of money in free agency, and also utilizing the draft to get some young talent and what Joe Schoen would call cost controlled. So some interesting guys here that we have to talk about. There's a lot of different directions the Giants can go, but I also want to discuss for a couple of minutes the salary situation that I do have next year and why the Giants are actually able to make a couple moves, even though we have negative $12 million in salary space at the moment. We do have some flexibility, and I will tell you why before we do so. Anthony, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I really like this kind of rebuild of the offensive line, this projection, this mock rebuild. I think it's really fun because the Giants, yes, their offensive line is really, really bad. We all know that. It's terrible. But they've got a lot of draft resources, and they do have a bit more cap flexibility than people seem to give them credit for. They have an opportunity here to actually rebuild the offensive line and to do it rather quickly. They can do it pretty quickly, get things better in front of Daniel Jones, and hopefully he can have a solid 2022 season. New scheme. It's basically a new team. And then hopefully the Giants can really just turn things around. But we all know that it starts up front. The offensive line is the most important thing. So the Giants, they have to get that handled. It took them years to even realize that when they drafted Andrew Thomas in the first round. I mean, Dave Gettleman just couldn't get it done. He made promises, false promises. He broke all of them. He was not able to fix that offensive line. But Joe Schoen's going to step in here. He's also promising to fix it. But I believe that he actually will. And I can't wait to see exactly what he does with the offensive line.
Absolutely. He's talked about how we have to clear about $40 million in cap space, right? The Giants have negative $12 million at the moment. And we've talked about different players. I talked yesterday's episode about Laken Tomlinson and Austin Corbett, two players the Giants could look at in free agency and how they could clear up some salary space. But next year, a lot of those contracts are expiring nonetheless. So we have a projected $92 million with the salary cap increasing due to the big TV deals and contracts naturally expiring, like I mentioned before. And on top of that, we have $92 million projected next year. This is before we sign our draft picks this season and make any free agent signings. Of course, that will have an impact. But here's an interesting take, Anthony. Leonard Williams, the Giants can cut him next year and save $18 million. That would pay for our draft picks this year and any free agencies signings that we get this year as well, at least some minor guys. So that's a guy, you could turn Leonard Williams. Theoretically, you could turn his money into an entire draft class of 9 players, if not more, and a couple of free agent signings. What's the value there, Anthony? And I'm just going to ask you this before we dive into this rebuild. But, when you're looking at from that kind of perspective, you can turn Leonard Williams, who is a good player and very productive, you can turn him into 9+ players from a draft class and a free agent signing or 2. How does that make you feel in terms of the value?
I mean, that value is tremendous. It's just, is he more valuable than that, right? Like it's option A or it's option B, red pill, blue pill, right? Which one do you prefer? And obviously that's going to be up to personal preference. And I know there's going to be plenty of fans, who might feel this way in the comment section and say, no, do not cut Leonard Williams. He's one of our only good players. And that is true. He is literally one of our only good, solid players on our roster. So cutting him kind of like not the best idea, but you really look at the long-term outlook of it. And if that's the way that Joe Schoen looks at it, taking the long-term approach, he might just have to. Like, we might have to make some tough decisions here. We might have to cut some really good players in order to free up some cap space and rebuild this team. Because, yeah, he's one great impact player at one position. But what if you could somehow manage to get 4 different players at 4 different positions that all have a solid impact? It might just add up to the same amount that Leonard Williams, the same amount of value that Leonard Williams is providing. And the value of an interior defensive lineman, that's what Leonard Williams is, might not be as high as the potential value that you could get by cutting him and maybe signing an offensive lineman or signing a wide receiver. You might get more value out of other positions that you have a greater positional need for. So I think it's going to be an interesting debate. Obviously, he's safe for this upcoming season, but next offseason, I do think that the debate about whether or not Leonard Williams will be here in 2023 is going to be a strong debate and one that's going to be really, really intense for Giants fans.
Exactly. So if you consider the fact, let's say they get rid of Leonard Williams next year and we count that money in, they have $110 million, guys, to spend next year. We are in actually not that bad cap situation, which is why I'm going to present some of these this rebuild of the offensive line. You're going to see some players and you're going to wonder, how can we afford them? It's because when you're signing new players, you always have to make these decisions. And I'll tell you what, the Giants, with this approach of this rebuild right now, any new players that we sign, I'm okay pushing their money back to next season in 2023 or whatever it might be, and kind of moving that money around. Any players currently on the roster, I'm not looking to restructure their contracts and push it down the road any further. I'm looking to cut those guys if possible, trade those guys entirely, or let their contracts expire naturally. Those are the three courses of action that I see for the Giants. But let's dive into this rebuild, Anthony. The first player, obviously, is going to be Andrew Thomas. He's our cemented left tackle. He's the only player on this line that I feel pretty confident is going to remain a starter moving forward. Nick Gates, I really love the guy. I don't think he's going to be the starter next season because of that leg injury. He's going to need another full year, in my opinion, to get back to where he was, if he ever will get there. I don't want to put all my chips in that being the case, so you have to have a backup plan and a competent one. So Andrew Thomas at left tackle, he's cemented. We can kind of pass by him because we know he gave up 2 sacks last year, and we know he's cemented there. So pretty solidified. Left guard, I went with Laken Tomlinson. Laken Tomlinson is a very good run blocker. He's a good pass blocker. His projected salary is around 3 years, $27 million. He'll probably get a little bit more. There's going to be some teams that really like him, but always money talks. And I'm totally fine bringing him on and pushing that cap hit to 2023. I don't think it's that big of a deal. He's not going to be overly expensive. He's 30 years old, coming from the San Francisco 49ers, a championship caliber team. He knows how to win. He knows what a good culture looks like. He was a part of one of the best running games in the NFL, so he knows what that looks like as well. He can probably bring some good experience and knowledge over into what they can do to further explore different ways to utilize Saquon Barkley or Kadarius Toney like they do Deebo Samuel. I think that's really cool. He's not as fast as some of the other guys. He's more of a power anchor guy, which I do like in pass protection, especially alongside another power guy like Andrew Thomas. I think the combination of Laken Tomlinson and Andrew Thomas would be just a tremendous upgrade compared to what Thomas has had to deal with in the past. Matt Skura, Will Hernandez. Laken Tomlinson is established. He's experienced. He's a veteran. He's 30 years old. I like that about him. The Giants need to have experienced veterans on this line to help complement some of the younger guys. There's going to be young rookies on this line. They need to have some older guys to help smooth the transition over and really help Daniel Jones. Laken Tomlinson is one of the better options on the market. Some people have brought up the name James McDaniel. We'll take a look at him in the future, of course. But in this scenario, I went with Laken Tomlinson because he's coming from a very good team. He knows how to get it done. He was an above average blocker last year. And I think that we can get him at a pretty efficient contract for his age. And, he can offer immediate upgrades over anything that we have on the roster currently and what we've had over the past maybe 5-6 years at left guard. So Anthony, when you're looking at Laken Tomlinson, how do you feel about him, holding down that left guard spot next to Andrew Thomas?
I think Laken Tomlinson would be perfect for the Giants. That would be a perfect signing if they could afford it. So I'm taking a look at this right now. Laken Tomlinson, his contract projection is 3 years, $27 million. So it's about $9 million per year. Now the Giants are going to have to free up quite a bit of cap space in order to fit that in. Of course, they're over $10 million over the cap right now. And of course, they're trying to get to $40 million in total space. But signing Laken Tomlinson would take up a fourth of that space, basically. So that's kind of a lot. It might be a tough sell to Joe Shane and company. But this is the great way to kind of fix a whole offensive line position over the next 3 years because Laken Tomlinson's really solid. PFF has him ranked as their number 26 overall free agent out of 200 best free agents in this year's free agency class. His strengths, he's value add in run game, one of the highest percentage of positively graded run blocks according to PFF. He's a great zone blocker, which is important for the Giants implementing Brian Dable's offense because there is a lot of zone blocking in that. But weaknesses, pass blocking on true pass sets, locking on the targets on the move. He's not the best pass blocker, but if you want a really good run blocking offensive lineman, Laken Tomlinson might just be the best one to hit the market this offseason. I mean, he played in that Kyle Shanahan offense. We know how great of a rushing offense that is, and we know that Laken Tomlinson had a tremendous part in the success of that offense because he is a great run blocker. So I think this would be a perfect signing for the Giants. Kudos to you for finding this one and pointing this out because this is probably the number one guy that the Giants should pursue in free agency this offseason. They have to fix the offensive line. That's the number one priority, and Laken Tomlinson would go a long way towards actually rebuilding this offensive line.
Absolutely. And I want to do a couple of more rebuilds this year for the offensive line. There's so many different directions we can go. Another guy that really pops to mind is Andrew Norwell, coming off a big contract with the Jaguars, same age as Laken Tomlinson. He's kind of been underwhelming based on the money he was getting, but I think that he'll probably earn a similar amount to Tomlinson. He's a really good pass blocker. I think Andrew Norwell is another guy that I think would be a solid veteran to bring in here. But in this scenario, we go with Laken Tomlinson because he's just a mauler. He's really strong. I do think that his pass blocking, they consider it a weakness, but don't look too much into that. From considering what we've had the last couple of years, Laken Tomlinson is tenfold better than anything we've had as a pass blocker. So keep that in mind. His weakness is pass blocking, but it's just because his strength is so obviously as a strong run blocker. And if the Giants do want to establish a really strong running game, he's a guy you want to have next to Andrew Thomas and the center, who we're going to talk about now. I went with center Ben Jones from Tennessee. Ben Jones I think he gave up 3 quarterback hits in the last 6 games combined. No sacks during that span. He was tremendous. Ben Jones is a guy who I think the Giants could snag on a pretty price efficient contract. And that's where I'm going with this. I want to say, I do want to say that Nick Gates is going to make a full recovery, but I don't want to put all my chips in that basket just yet. I would love to have Tyler Linderbaum, but I think that the Giants go to kind of a different direction in this draft class. We'll see at right guard and right tackle where we go here. But they pass on Tyler Linderbaum, and because of that, they have to get a veteran center. Ben Jones, he's experienced. He can point things out on the defense. He's with the Tennessee Titans, a very good team, disciplined team that executes well with one of the best running games in football, with Derrick Henry involved. You have Laken Tomlinson, Ben Jones, 2 good run blocking guys. I think that you can really do some special things with those guys, and it's a much improved line just based on those 2 acquisitions alone. So, Anthony, when you're looking at Ben Jones, do you think that could be a good fit for the Giants? I don't think he's too costly by any means. Veteran with experience might be a good solution there.
Yeah, I think that would be great for the Giants. I love Nick Gates. I love especially the leadership qualities that he has, the mentality that he brings to football, and the character that he brings to the New York Giants. But unfortunately, major question marks there. That was a horrible break to his leg. It was really, really bad. And it's not like it happened in the offseason. It's not like it happened in preseason or training camp. It happened in the regular season. Granted, it was week 2. But if we're talking about an injury like that, it's a full calendar year, and it could be some change on top of that in order to make a 100% recovery. So he's probably not going to be 100% ready to go by the time the regular season rolls around. Like, if we're being realistic, I don't think that he's going to have a full training camp under his belt. I don't think he's going to have OTAs. I don't think he's going to be able to participate in anything preseason. I don't think that he's going to be ready to just jump right back in as a starter, especially you take into consideration that he was playing guard at the time. And if we're talking about signing a guard in free agency and then moving him back to center, well, now he's got to relearn center because he was just playing guard, and it's just complicated. It's going to take time with Nick Gates. I want to see him make this recovery. I really do. And I want to see him be super successful after he makes this recovery, but it just might be a while. We're going to have to be patient with him and give him all the support that he needs over this really long rehabbing process. So that's kind of how it is with Nick Gates. But Ben Jones, I think, is a great option. Another option, though, do the Giants want to go into free agency and spend money on the offensive line? That's a big question mark because I'm looking at his contract projection as well. 3 years, $20 million, so almost $7 million per year. So it's cheaper, it's affordable option for sure. This is an affordable contract, but it's not exactly cheap. It's not like it's a 1 year, $1 million, right? Like you might get at the wide receiver position. No matter what, even if you're getting an average offensive lineman or even a below average offensive lineman, you're going to be paying a premium because it's an offensive lineman. It is the hardest positional group to get solid. We all know that. We have seen the Giants struggle to get this position group solid for years now. They haven't been able to fix it. So if they want to fix it through free agency, they're going to be paying a free agency premium. It's like an extra tax on top because you're using free agency to fix your offensive line. So I like Ben Jones, though. He's very durable. He's a good run blocker. He brings a lot to the table that the Giants could really use. Like, he is kind of what they need at that center position. But I don't know if they're going to be willing to spend the money to acquire the talent as Ben Jones or really any of the rest of these guys. But I'm assuming at least one of these guys that you mentioned, the Giants are going to have some interest in because, yeah, we have 9 draft picks. Are we really going to spend 4 of them on the offensive line? We've got holes all over this roster. We're going to have to do something in free agency, whether it's a Laken Tomlinson, whether it's Ben Jones, or maybe even someone else who might not even be up to the standard of performance that these 2 guys are, because these guys are pretty good. These are good players. The Giants signed these guys, and we should be very happy about it. But there's a lot of other guys on the market that might be more realistic options that might not be as good.
Yeah, and it really depends on if they're willing to push the money back to 2023. That is what this entire thing is predicated on, because like I mentioned, they could have upwards of $100 million available. If that is the case, I don't see a problem in going after Laken Tomlinson, Ben Jones, and pushing some of that money to another year because they have so much of it. And this is a rebuild, right? 3-year contracts out and an out after the second season is pretty reasonable in my opinion. We don't want to be in another situation where, you get a Kevin Zeitler and then you let him go and our offensive line is the worst in the NFL. I think we need to invest more in the offensive line. Joe Shane knows that. He's already acknowledged the OL needs to be addressed. But like you said, these guys could be a little bit too pricey depending on if they're willing to spend money from future years, and that really is the deciding factor in all of this. But now we head over to the right side of the line where they can really use the draft, and that is where the money becomes a little bit less influential. Now we can use those first-round picks, second-round picks to see what we can grab. And at right guard, I go with Boston College interior lineman Zion Johnson, right? Zion Johnson is a really interesting prospect. He's not the longest guy. He's not the biggest guy, which is why he doesn't play tackle. He moved inside to guard, but he's strong. He's aggressive, and he's really physical, and he's a good run blocker. So right across the board, if you have Laken Tomlinson, Andrew Thomas, Ben Jones, and then you get Zion Johnson, you have really good run blocking across the board now. And the passing game is reliant on the running game being good. If you have a good running game, it opens up play action. It opens up the entire passing game for Daniel Jones, who showed that he's actually a pretty good quarterback when he rolls out to his right side. So I do like the fact that, we're kind of building a line here who's tough. They're physical, they're aggressive, and they also have a lot of upside as pass blockers. Laken Tomlinson is not a bad pass blocker. Andrew Thomas is a great pass blocker. Ben Jones, good pass blocker. Zion Johnson, he's a great run blocker. He's physical and aggressive, but I think he also has upside as a pass blocker as well. If we can grab him at 37 in the second round, I would be very happy about that. He's a good player and a rookie that has upside. So that's what I'm looking for, Anthony. When you're looking at Zion Johnson, I think this is a home run pick for the Giants if he's available. How do you feel about him?
I think Zion Johnson, I'm assuming round 2 pick, this would be phenomenal. This is exactly what they need, is to find a starting offensive lineman, not in the first round of the NFL draft, right? Because we know that they're going to try and get a starting offensive lineman in the first round, right? Whether it's pick 5 or pick 7, or if they trade down, they're definitely taking an offensive lineman in the first round of this year's draft. I could bet so much money on that. Like, I feel so confident that that's their game plan. Take an offensive lineman within one of your first picks of this draft. But outside of the first round, that's where it gets really important for the Giants. That's where they need to go ahead and find some other starters. It can't just be in the first round. Like, they're going to have to find somebody in round 2, maybe even around 3 or 4. Like, you need to find good players throughout the draft. We talked about this 2 days ago, Alex. Remember, we were saying the draft doesn't end after day 1. It's not just the first round of the draft. Look at the graveyard of draft picks that Dave Gettleman left behind from rounds 3 to 7, right? Everything after the second round was a joke for Dave Gettleman for the most part, right? A couple good picks here and there, but for the most part, a graveyard, nothing good. But the Bills, Joe Shane, they know how to draft in the middle rounds. They know how important that is to find starters in those middle rounds. So if we're talking about getting this offensive line right, you have to find some starters in those middle rounds. And I definitely think Zion Johnson in round 2, or if they find another guy in round 3 or 4 that can start at right guard, that's really important. That's what the Giants absolutely need, is to get some starters outside of the first round on the offensive line. And I think that Johnson's a tremendous talent. I did an article. He was featured in it last week. He's really, really good. I like everything that he brings to the table. He's not the only option. There's other options as well. Darian Kinnard, he's a right tackle for Kentucky, but they're projecting he's going to move into guard. That's another name you could keep an eye on. There's a lot of options out there. This is a pretty solid offensive line draft class, and I'm excited to see the Giants finally, hopefully, take advantage of the talent in this year's draft.
Absolutely. And speaking of taking advantage of talent in this year's draft, let's take a look at the right tackle spot where the Giants land NC State standout tackle Ikem Ekwonu, who is from a family and lineage of athletes in Nigeria. I believe his mother was like a track star. He is incredibly athletic. The guy is massive. I think, what is he, 6'4"? Let's see here. Ikem Ekwonu stands at 6'4", 320 pounds, an unbelievable athlete. He's long, he's lanky, he's strong as hell, he's aggressive, he's a phenomenal run blocker. And coincidentally, we have just built maybe one of the best run blocking offensive lines in football with this group. At least in terms of on paper, who knows what they'll actually do, but all these guys are very proficient in run blocking. I'll tell you what, if Saquon Barkley is still on the team and they somehow manage to put this kind of offensive line together, he's going to be one happy man, because going from last year's unit to this type of line and the run blocking they would provide would be unbelievable. Ikem Ekwonu is a tremendous talent with Pro Bowl potential in year 2 or 3. He is a really, really talented player, former 3-star, but he's developed every single year at the collegiate level. His scheme fit, they're saying, is kind of universal. So that's really something that I like to hear. He can fit a variety of different schemes, whether it's the wide zone, in vertical or horizontal pass, pass blocking, if he's shifting with the line left or right, just being one-on-one in those vertical sets. I think he's more than capable of becoming a great guy. Now, the question is, Anthony, my biggest concern, all of these tackles, the top 3 tackles in the draft, Ikem Ekwonu, Evan Neal, Charles Cross, Those three guys are all left tackles. Can they make the transition to the right side? That's the question. The Giants are going to have to ask themselves, who is the better fit to make the transition to right tackle, Charles Cross or Ikem Ekwonu? I think Ekwonu, being a tremendous athlete, not to say that Charles Cross isn't, I think Ekwonu's natural athleticism and raw talents will give him the better ability to make that transition to the right side. Personally, that's how I feel. But Anthony, looking at Ekwonu and how good of a run blocker he is, and how he just kind of accidentally built this monster run blocking offensive line, how do you feel about Ekwonu? Let's say at the 5th overall selection, and what they could do in the running game with like guys like Kadarius Toney, Saquon Barkley, and just getting kind of creative.
Yeah, I like the pick of Ikem Ekwonu here. I think that's awesome. And, you kind of just mentioned something that I think is really interesting. Pretty much all of the guys that we put on this offensive line in this mock, offensive line rebuild, they're really good run blockers. Now, here's the thing about that, right? Sounds great, looks good on paper, tremendous. But is that really what Brian Daboll wants? Does that fit his scheme? It's a pass-heavy scheme. It's an 11 personnel scheme. It's one where they like to run 30% of the time while passing 70% of the time, right? Like they like to throw the ball in Brian Daboll's scheme. And then we're talking about Mike Kafka as well, coming over from Kansas City. They like to throw the ball more than they like to run the ball by a wide margin. So, yeah, Ikem Ekwonu is a great talent, but I do think that there's a debate to be had over whether or not Ikem Ekwonu or Charles Cross is the better fit for the New York Giants. I think Ekwonu is the better player, the better prospect, but the better fit for the Giants might have to do with pass blocking. And Charles Cross, world-class pass blocker. He is phenomenal as a pass protector. But Ikem Ekwonu, really world-class run blocker. So it's like pick your poison. Red pill, blue pill. It's coming up again. Which one do you prefer? And I just have to say, I think that Brian Daboll is going to prefer the pass blocker, and that's where it's going to get really interesting. Maybe the Giants wait till pick 7, go with Charles Cross rather than pick 5. And then maybe you have the debate, do the Giants trade down from pick 5 and they go with the offensive lineman at pick 7? That's a whole nother debate you can have right there. But if this is the way that the Giants go, they get all these great run blockers on this offensive line, I love it. I think that it's great, and I think that it's going to open up a myriad of opportunities for Saquon Barkley, for Daniel Jones, for Kadarius Toney. These guys are good on their feet. They know how to run the football. They know how to make plays in open space, but they need a good offensive line in front of them, especially Saquon Barkley. He needs a better offensive line in front of him. If the Giants really do plan on going ahead with Saquon Barkley this year, making him the primary superstar in this offense like he was in 2018, they just got to fix the offensive line. Let him get to work. Let him have opportunities, because over the past couple of years, he hasn't had many. So if this is the way that they go with these offensive linemen, good run blockers, creates more opportunities for Saquon Barkley and hopefully creates a much more efficient offense.
Yeah, I mean, look, the running game is essential for a competent NFL offense. You look at most of the great offenses. Even look at the Bengals. The way they use Joe Mixon, he was a tremendous impact player for them down the stretch. Even the Chiefs with Damian Williams and doing some really unique things there, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Look at the impact that Jonathan Taylor had this year. Got like 20 touchdowns. He had more touchdowns than the entire Giants team alone. So you can see what a really great running game can do for you. But the thing about this offensive line, and I keep saying, we built a unit here that is an unbelievable run blocking unit, but they're not bad pass blockers either, right? Ikem Ekwonu is a good pass blocker. He's stronger as a run blocker. Laken Tomlinson, good pass blocker, better as a run blocker. The weaknesses aren't really weaknesses. They're just not as good in those areas. That doesn't mean they can't get better. Zion Johnson and Ikem Ekwonu are coming as pretty raw prospects with a lot of ability to be molded. The Giants have a competent offensive staff, depending on what the scheme they want to run here. And I'll tell you what, I'm pretty confident a Zion Johnson and Ikem Ekwonu combination would be far better than a Nate Solder and Will Hernandez combination. So I kind of I want to say that. I want to make sure that I point that out and make sure that people understand that we're going to get better play from the unit that we just built here. But I really would love to hear your opinion on this group that we built, and any ideas that you have alternatively, who you think the Giants should go with, or maybe a different combination of players. Always love to hear your perspectives and opinions below on the YouTube channel. So much love for engaging as always. Make sure to like and subscribe the video. Hope you guys enjoyed this interesting rebuild. We'll be doing plenty more in the future. If you have any topics you want us to cover, please let us know as well in the comments. We would love to cover anything you guys want us to, and that's what we're here for. So have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.